On April 20, 2025, Pope Francis delivered his final public message from St. Peter's Square in Vatican City. It was Easter Sunday, a day that holds deep significance for Christians worldwide as a symbol of hope and renewal. Due to his declining health and the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, this Easter stood out as a notable moment. Pope Francis, then 88 years old, appeared on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica in a weakened state, seated and wearing his casual papal attire. Having been affected by pneumonia, he could not deliver the speech himself. Instead, Archbishop Diego Ravelli, the master of pontifical liturgical celebrations, read the prepared text on his behalf. The speech, later recognized as his last public address, called for peace, with a specific focus on urging a ceasefire in Gaza amid the worsening conflict. We will walk you through the context of the Pope's speech, the suffering in Gaza, the echo of his words in Islamic teachings, and what this all means for us. The crisis in Gaza, a humanitarian tragedy. Gaza in 2025 is not just a war zone, it is a broken home. Since October 2023, more than 51,200 Palestinians have been killed and 113,274 wounded. Many were women, many were children. The images are painful. Collapsed buildings, wounded babies in makeshift hospitals, fathers digging through rubble, mothers screaming for their sons. Israel's blockade has turned Gaza into an open-air prison. Food is scarce, water is polluted, medicine is almost non-existent. This is not a political statement. It is a human one, a reflection of what the United Nations has already called a catastrophic humanitarian failure. Between March 18 and April 9 of 2025, 36 Israeli airstrikes killed only women and children. No soldiers, no fighters, just civilians. Even churches weren't spared. In October 2023, the Church of St. Porphyrius, one of the oldest churches in Gaza, was bombed. 18 people died, Muslims and Christians alike. The Christian community in Gaza is small, but they suffer the same. They live under the same bombs. They lose the same children. They bury the same dreams. But here's what hurts even more. Much of the world looks away. Some governments express concern, others fund the destruction directly. Few act. Pope Francis chose not to be silent. He chose Gaza. He chose to speak for a people whose voices have been silenced by debris and politics. Why Gaza? Because it's a mirror. It shows us who we really are, whether we respond with justice or indifference, whether our values are rooted in convenience or conviction. Ask yourself, if you had one last breath, what cause would you speak for? The speech itself. Pope Francis could not physically speak on Easter, so Archbishop Diego Ravelli delivered the words for him. From his wheelchair, Pope Francis blessed the crowd, and the speech was read aloud. I would like us to renew our hope that peace is possible. From the Holy Sepulchre, the Church of the Resurrection, where this year Easter is being celebrated by Catholics and Orthodox on the same day. May the light of peace radiate throughout the Holy Land and the entire world. I express my closeness to the sufferings of Christians in Palestine and Israel, and to all the Israeli people and the Palestinian people. The growing climate of anti-Semitism throughout the world is worrisome. Yet, at the same time, I think of the people of Gaza and its Christian community in particular, where the terrible conflict continues to cause death and destruction and to create a dramatic and deplorable humanitarian situation. I appeal to the warring parties, call a ceasefire, release the hostages, and come to the aid of a starving people that aspires to a future of peace. That was it. Direct, uncompromising, hopeful, yet urgent. He mentioned both Christians and Jews. He condemned anti-Semitism, but he didn't shy away from naming Gaza. He called out the starvation. He called out the suffering. He asked for a ceasefire. He asked for mercy. And in doing so, he did something many leaders have failed to do. He made Gaza human again. Not a headline, not a debate, but a cry from the heart. His final speech challenges all of us, especially those of faith. What are we doing when people starve? When hospitals collapse? When babies die for lack of water? We've heard the Pope's final words. We've seen the suffering he spoke of. But now we ask, what makes this message so important for Muslims? Why should this speech matter in masjids, in Muslim homes, in our hearts? Because when truth is spoken with courage, it echoes across religions. Because silence in the face of oppression is not an option. And because of the Quran reminds us, time and again, and do not let the hatred of a people prevent you from being just. Be just. That is nearer to righteousness. Surah Al-Ma'idah 5:8. Islamic teachings on peace, war, and justice. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ never glorified war. He never attacked the innocent. He honored treaties. He forbade targeting women, children, the elderly, and places of worship. Even in war, there was a code, a boundary, and the line was always drawn at justice. So when you hear of hospitals bombed, churches destroyed, civilians buried under rubble, you must understand. This is not just about Palestine. This is a violation of everything Islam stands for. The Prophet ﷺ once cried when he saw a woman killed in battle. He said, "She was not fighting. Why was she killed?" Hadith Sahih Bukhari. And this isn't just prophetic mercy, it's law. Even classical Islamic jurists wrote volumes on the ethics of war. Rules that prohibited destructions of crops, poisoning of water, and harm to the innocent. So when Pope Francis said, "Come to the aid of a starving people that aspires to a future of peace," he wasn't preaching Christianity, he was calling for universal decency. Christian-Muslim solidarity. Let's pause here, because this is where things get uncomfortable for some. Can a Muslim really take inspiration from a pope? Is it okay to stand side by side with the Christian voice for justice? The answer is not only yes, it's necessary. Let's go back to the Quran again. Indeed, those who believe and those who are Jews or Christians, whoever believes in Allah and the last day and does good, there will be no fear for them, nor they will grieve. Surah Al-Baqarah 262. This verse doesn't divide people by their theology. It binds them by their intentions. And the idea is not abstract. The Prophet ﷺ welcomed Christians from Najran to his mosque in Medina. They debated theology, but when it was time to pray, he let them pray in his mosque. Because spiritual disagreement does not justify hatred, because compassion crosses boundaries. And today, when the bombs fall in Gaza, they do not ask if the child is Christian or Muslim. They kill regardless. And so, we must protect regardless. We must mourn regardless. We must stand up regardless. Pope Francis stood for them. Will you stand with him? Media, hypocrisy, and the cost of selective outrage. There's another layer to this conversation, a darker one. The media silence, the double standards, the selective empathy. When Ukraine was invaded, the world lit up with flags. News channels gave 24-hour coverage. Aid flowed from every direction. War was condemned loudly. But Gaza? Gaza gets fact-checked. Gaza gets both sides. Gaza gets blamed for its own wounds. This is not just about bias, it's about dehumanization. And yet, amidst this silence, one frail man in white, too weak to stand, chose to speak. When world leaders play politics, when powerful governments armed injustice, when the global conscience fell asleep, Pope Francis stayed awake. His final speech is a rebuke to that silence, a reminder that moral charity does not acquire permission. And for us, as Muslims, it should serve as a wake-up call. Because the question is not, why did the Pope speak? The question is, why haven't more of us? This moment is not about agreeing on every theological detail. It's about agreeing on one simple truth. Injustice is haram, and silence helps the oppressor. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Help your brother, whether he is an oppressor or the oppressed." When the companions asked, "How can we help an oppressor?" he replied, "By stopping him from his oppression." Hadith Sahih Bukhari. That is the message in the speech. That is the fire in these final words. Stop the injustice. Stop the oppression. Stop the bombs. This wasn't a regular Easter address. It was a will, a testament, a farewell gift from a dying leader who saw the world in flames and used his last breath to say, "Enough." And what did he ask of you? Not to convert, not to agree with every church teaching, but to care, to feel, to act. So ask yourself now, what is your legacy? When your time comes, what side of history will your silence place you on? Because sometimes the most powerful sermons come from those who can no longer speak. Islamic leaders, silence or solidarity? We have to ask an uncomfortable question now. Why did it take a Christian to say what Muslim leaders should have said first? Where is the OIC? Where are the khutbahs that shake the walls? Where are the open demands for accountability? The Prophet ﷺ was in silence when injustice happened. He didn't wait for public poll. He stood up, even if it meant standing alone. So what happened to that fire, that backbone, that legacy of speaking truth to power? We cannot claim to follow a prophet who challenged empires, while we remain afraid to criticize a single regime. And here's what makes it worse. The longer the silence, the louder the suffering. the more muted our outrage, the more normalized the horror becomes. When the cross holds the crescent accountable. There's a painful irony here. It was a man in a white robe with a cross who reminded us, the followers of the crescent, that compassion is a duty, not a choice, not a political tool, a divine command. And yet, here we are, a global ummah of nearly 2 billion, watching in horror, waiting for someone else to speak up. Let that sink in. Let it break your heart. Because when a dying pope has more moral courage than living kings, something has gone terribly wrong. Standing for Gaza, a test of faith. Let's make this simple. If you are silent in the face of oppression, you have failed the test of faith. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever among you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. If he cannot, then with his tongue. If he cannot, then with his heart. And that is the weakest of faith." Hadith Sahih Muslim. This isn't optional. This isn't politics. This is religion. This is Iman. And today the evil is clear. The images are undeniable. The statistics are horrifying. And the Pope's words are a mirror reflecting what we should be saying, what we should be feeling, what we should be doing. So ask yourself, if a dying man could summon the strength to speak, what's stopping us? May God have mercy on the oppressed, and may He awaken the hearts of the free.
ثم الصلاة على النبي محمد سبب القوي إلى المقام